They're doing it because they can, because the system is enabling that to happen. So I suppose at one level is change the nature of the assessment so that, for example, remembering or even being able to discuss with another person is not the object of the assessment. It's fine for them to be able to do that kind of thing. The assessment must be making judgments about other things, like their reflective capacity, their capacity to evaluate. So we're not knowledge dependent in our assignment. So therefore the cheating element is reduced. Or we go the proctor route, where we make sure that we have a camera that says, this examination is available for these 3 hours, Central African time, and this is where you will sit, and you'll be monitored. I mean, to the nth degree you can be monitored. I mean, analytics tells us this. I know, for example, that there are cases where students' finger movements on the keyboard are monitored to make sure that they're not sort of, so there are lots of ways, there are plenty of ways in which regulation can be employed. But I think it's more important to start with purpose. Why do we do this? And if it is that we're creating an exam setting, like we do with final year examinations very often, where the high stakes exam is so strongly recall, we're encouraging a kind of learning that some students will do extremely well, and then they'll forget everything that they've learned. And we're encouraging the possibility that if we have to move into the off-campus space, that they can cheat. Well, then we've got to go back to first principles. What are we assessing? Why are we assessing it that way? Can we do it differently? And still achieve what we want to achieve? Because maths, I'll stop there. Sorry.
Also just linking on this, and I know it's going on over the same point, but so say for example next week our lectures stop and we have one final test we need to do for the module, and so for example what happened last year, where you give students 2 hours, and so 2 hours should mean that there isn't time for them to collaborate with other students, they do it at home on their own. But then an hour later certain students come and say they had internet access issues. And so we need to be sensitive to those kind of things, and we know at UWC those are genuine challenges, and we know that some students do have a genuine challenge. They couldn't get the transport to get to the library or the venue, and it's very difficult to determine which students had a genuine challenge. And then you see in the same test examples where students have copied and pasted word for word from each other, but they gave the excuse that they had this challenge. So the long-term solution is having venues and all of the other things that you've spoken about. But if this had to happen next week, I would.
Yeah. So I think what we've learned about through the protests over the last 2 and now this is the 3rd year, is that we haven't been terribly proactive about intervening. I mean, so in a way, if the same things occur again this year as occurred last year and the year before, we really have ourselves to blame. I mean, then what the hell did we learn over the last 3 years that hasn't enabled us to change practice? And I know there are still colleagues of mine who will say the final high-stakes written examination is the gold standard. It is the only way in which we can assess students, and that's what we're going to do come hell or high water. Unfortunately, the hell and the high water were pretty high, and so we couldn't do it. So then you have to go back to say, why is it that single examination counts so much? What could we have done differently? We have to do that. There was
I think it's very discipline specific also. Like the gentleman from OT was saying, you need an OSCE, which is a clinical examination, to evaluate certain things. But it doesn't mean that it comes down to weighting again, and what are you doing in your formative assessment? So what I'm trying to do with students is also trying to have a clinical logbook where they actually document and reflect on the engagement, and they also reflect on what they think their skill level would be. So giving them maybe a guideline of 4 points and saying, okay, theoretical knowledge or practical knowledge, and with assistance, or you're able to do these things. So then you also have the student reflecting on how well they think they're doing, but then the lecturer or the supervisor could also reflect on what they think the skill level is for the student. But that needs to also count towards, as a formative, towards the weighting of the content of the course. Otherwise, students also then won't do it.
Sure.
It's all about what counts from what doesn't. And then what you were saying about videos of patients or doing certain examinations, yes, you can do it to a certain extent to maybe find out what they know on like what textbook knowledge. But then when it comes to case study discussion, discussions. You can even put that on an online platform saying, okay, this is the case. So do a voice over on what you think is going on with the patient. And then for part 2, that will have to be face-to-face. So do your blood pressure patient, do your assessments of what you think should be done, and then come up with that diagnosis. So it's multifaceted also depending on this.
I think, yeah, I mean, that's, you mentioned right at the end there, multiple forms of assessment are better than just one form of assessment, even in the space where we know we're resource constrained and so on. So we've got to be quite creative and adaptive about those approaches. The other point which is critical, and I've said it before, I'll say it again, students have to be taken with us on this journey. So if we're going to change the way in which we do assessment, online, offline, wherever, we're going to have to enable students to understand that change and why it's happening and where it's coming from and what it takes for them to be prepared, because they will understandably and reasonably react to an assessment that they don't believe is fair. That's the biggest red flag to students, is it's not fair. So we've got to keep making sure that we do mediate that. Okay, then we're going to go on.
There's different forms of learning at different students. Some students don't think class, but very good at memory, so they'll do very well at different things. That doesn't mean that they're competent.
No. So the claims we can make about their learning are somewhat limited, and we need to be thinking about those claims. But there is an onus on us here again if we're going to change the forms of assessment, we will have to be able to defend those changes. We can't, it's not just whimsical stuff. We've got to have some theoretical and clearly argued base for the changes we make as well. And that sometimes is just exhausting for academics. It's rather, let's just stay with what we've got. Because there's so much else going on here. I'm so under pressure, and I accept that. But that's just a bridge too far. Sorry, Becky, yeah.
And just the issue that you've got principles under design. And something that I think is missing there are considerations around storage.
Yes.
Like data storage of all these electronic assignments.
Yeah.
And I think you see still grappling with that in terms of looking at portals and places. But I have Krishna says last year when utility went down. So I had hundreds of scripts online and they're just like books gone. So I think, yeah, just those considerations are quite important.
Very, very. Both at the individual level and also at the institutional level, and perhaps even beyond, because I think I sort of alluded to that in questions about the record and about ethics and so on, and analytics, but yes, the institutional level attention to that, and for that matter, the cloud. And I know there are huge debates about which is more secure, the cloud or Google or something else. We do need to pay attention to that stuff, because those records are forever. Or they disappear forever, which is even more disastrous. Somebody here had a question as well, or was it? Okay, Simone.
My question is around quality and the fact that we've always done, we always do what we've always done. And so our institution has already uploaded the sit-down exams. And if we look at the current climate, UCT has been disrupted, CPUT has been disrupted. My concern is that we're going to be asked to move already internally and externally moderated papers into an online space. And so my question around how to do that without losing quality, given the fact that it is being moderated. And so it's not just asking a question, discuss, because that is going to mean that students are going to copy and paste from Google, actually, or their classmates, because we can't still use the screen, we don't have the mechanisms to do that, and even if we do, they're going to phone each other or Google on their phones. How do we... I grapple with this because our marks, we got our 5% if I'm not mistaken. And it's a quality issue.
And the quality question that you were raising earlier but for me the quality question is not a short-term question. You can't regulate quality or enable quality. Just what's happening now, what you've created now, was likely to happen, is going to have to just be managed. Whatever happens is going to have to be managed. There's nothing really specific that you can do in this space right now if something goes wrong in the next week or two. There's no magic silver bullet thing that you can do. that makes this a more secure examination in the short term. It's going to take some mechanism that says next time we have this kind of crisis, this is how we will respond. But we have to do it now before. Sorry, you've been there before. Yes, that's what I said. If we haven't learned after 3 years, then something's going wrong with the way in which we do it. Either we're doing the wrong kinds of examinations, or we haven't got the systems in place, or that type of thing, or we ask the kinds of questions that enable students to download from Google and get the marks they want.
Just one of my concern with this is that we've not prepared our students for online assessments in the formative during the term. So now they get bombarded or just throw and then shock on it.
Sure, that was the literacy or that's the misalignment thing that I was raising earlier. So to put it in an online space now is to say, wow, we're presenting you with a completely different. And in assessment terms, by the way, we're compromising validity by doing this. So we're not sure any more that we're testing what we're really supposed to be testing through this. But we can't. I don't think there's a short-term solution to these things. It's not addressable in a short-term way. There were a couple of other comments or questions. Yes, no.
I just wanted to say that we're grappling with assessment and how we are going to assess our students at the end. But we should also focus on our teaching practice.
Yeah.
We are working within the 21st century, and there's many things that are available to us. And still, we always focus on an end-of-year exam that's going to tell us what our students know. And I think this is what we've been saying throughout this workshop already. And I just want to say that that's why we are also at UWC looking at the blended approach, because we can't still focus on recall and memory when our students are coming in with different learning abilities and they've got different strengths and challenges. So this is what is basically more of what has been raised already. And then when we focus on also our culture needs to change, like you mentioned. From first year already, we need to instill, we're not just in the lecturing and asking our students to remember. We should engage, we should use our face-to-face contact sessions more, how can I say, more beneficial, more useful for students to engage, etc. So the learning styles of our students have changed, and our teaching practice should address and should adapt to that as well.
And I think Ian's point partly was that when the conditions under which teaching and learning take place change so fundamentally, they should have an impact on us. We can't simply say we'll continue doing things in exactly the same way as we've done before. And where I think, by the way, quality practices can play a strong role is they can be guiding, they can be providing us with good examples of good practice elsewhere that can enable these kinds of mechanisms. That can also help us to get away from it all being about sort of individual women idiosyncrasy, so that people just do what they feel like they do. That's okay, but somewhere along the line there needs to be some kind of guidance from some kind of institutional space. Question.
Carmen, I think 2 years ago we were asked obviously to pick up alternative assessments and going online. And everybody was like, no, they're like, okay, no, you go, yes. Yeah. And we put the exam online, it was all great, but then students were uploading their exams, obviously beyond the time that they were supposed to do so. And they were emailing their tutors and us as lecturers, so they're duplicating. And that was frustrating because eventually which one do we mark? Like, oh, excuse the first one, mark this one. And then we also noticed that we gave them a 3-hour time and people couldn't actually match it. And the main reasons was they would email us and they would say, we don't have access to data. We don't have our own laptops. So 2 of us are working together. Therefore, we could only write 1.5 pages for each of us. And one of the major concerns, because we need to look at the type of students we're getting here to UWC, not the UCT student, not the one of the students that we're getting over here. And then also, because we look at some of the student numbers and we're looking at how many students got this particular symbol, that particular, we look at particular scripts and we look at these are our best performing students. Why are they failing the exam? We call them in for an interview in January once we settle down here, and they're like, it's because we don't know about typing. We cannot type fast. We need all our assessments written because we don't have laptops and you accept those work. So therefore, and I mean, it's not fair to give them that type of mark because that's not the caliber of students. And this experience has pushed us in a way to actually change our assessment schedule. So instead of having the major component of our camp towards the end of the semester, now we actually moved it in the term 3 already. So we switched it out. We've already done some quizzes online. We had them uploaded to Dropbox, so they are sort of familiar. So it's changing, and also not just testing everything. We're looking at our main outcomes, our core components, and just doing that.
Sure. So it's had an impact on practice. You could be sharing these practices with one another. I think that's a really important starting point. But it's also given grounds for reflection as to how are these things happening, why did things go wrong. You've also raised the validity question. The student, the particular kind of student whose work is decidedly compromised when they go into the online spaces compared to somewhere else. But there's also an education component too, about enabling people to better do this kind of online assessment than is current. Okay, last question or comment. Yeah.
We have an interprofessional approach to teaching, right? So the assessments are group assessments. If I reflect on this year, our group assessments yield different results to individual assessments. I was wondering if you could just comment on how does one overcome that?
Yeah. Okay, at the simplest level, making sure that the processes of grading, feedback, moderation, those kinds of things are the same in the interdisciplinary space as they might be for the individual disciplines. But that's going to take learning. People will have to learn. They will have to look at other examples of practice. They will have to go to perhaps other sources of that kind of data, because that's at one level what is happening in that process. It's simply people are not familiar with, so therefore validity again is under threat, because we're marking or grading in ways that we're not used to grading in. So we've got to learn by going to the profession, by going to literature, by going to colleagues, by doing these things. I think also doing them in a formative way, so that when the high stakes assessment happens, we've had some practice. Not wait until the high stakes moment for the practice session to happen. Those kinds of things. Okay, I think we're going to have to wrap up now. We've had our 2 hours, but thanks very much for the extent of your contributions. Hopefully, again, probably this has just started a debate and a discussion, but hopefully contributed to it as well. Okay.
Thank you, colleagues. Prof. Swart had to run off sharing classes from one of the local facilities, but on behalf of UWC and especially the Faculty of Environmental and Health Sciences, I'd like to thank Professor Cliff for sharing these insights and knowledge with us, and I'm sure that we can take everything back to our departments, all the take-home lessons that you presented today. And it has been recorded, so we'll make sure that the recording is available for you and as well as your colleagues who were unable to attend. Thank you very much for coming.
If we could have one of you come to talk to us about what you're doing as well, because you may be doing things, we need to be sharing these things.
Absolutely.
Can you just be on the exam?
Yes. I've got some theory in particular.
Thank you very much.
Good and yours?
Was it? Are you please stop here?
I don't know. This is on and off button.
Yeah, man.